The wind was restless that evening, whispering through the jagged canyons of Arizona like a wounded spirit. A storm had passed hours earlier, leaving the world damp and smelling of sage. The sun dipped low, bleeding red and gold into the sky. When the woman stumbled through the dust, her wrists bound and her heart hammering with fear. Her name was Evelyn Hart, 30 years old, a widow from the small border town of Dry Creek. She'd been on her way to deliver medicine to a remote mining camp when her wagon was ambushed near the canyon's edge. Horses thundered out of nowhere, arrows slicing the air like lightning bolts. When the chaos settled, she'd been pulled from the wreck by a man whose silence chilled her more than the desert wind ever could. He was Apache, tall, bare-chested, his skin bronzed by sun and scars, his long black hair tied loosely with strips of rawhide. His eyes, dark as obsidian, didn't blink when he looked at her. There was power in that stillness, something ancient and unreadable. He hadn't killed her. Not yet. Now, under the dimming light, Evelyn sat by a small fire he had built near a rock wall that shielded them from the wind. Her hands were still tied, but she could move enough to sip the water he'd placed near her. Every time she looked up, he was there, crouched a few feet away, sharpening his knife on a smooth stone, the faint sound of metal scraping echoing like a heartbeat in the canyon. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered finally, her voice cracking. "If it's money you want, the town will pay." He didn't answer. The only sound was the knife's whisper. She swallowed hard. "Please, at least tell me your name." He stopped sharpening and glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke for the first time, his English rough but clear. "My name means thunder after fire," he said quietly. "You may call me Kaya." "Kaya," she repeated, the word trembling in her mouth. "Why did you take me?" He stood, his silhouette tall against the fading sky. "Because your people took something from us," he said, "and I was sent to take something back." Her heart sank. "You think I had anything to do with that?" "I'm just a nurse. I help people." "Then you will help my brother," Kaya said. "If you fail, you will not see another sunrise." The words struck her like a lash. Her throat tightened as she tried to steady her breath. Somewhere in the shadows beyond the fire, she heard a faint groan, human, weak, pained. Kaya turned and motioned with his chin. He was shot by white men 2 nights ago. Bullets still inside. Evelyn's instincts kicked in, the healer in her momentarily overriding the fear. "I'll need light," she said softly. Kaya nodded, tossing dry brush into the fire. The flames flared higher, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and blood. Evelyn crawled closer to where the injured man lay, younger, maybe 20, his chest bound in crude hides soaked through with blood. His breathing was shallow. She looked up at Kaya. "Untie me. I can't help him like this." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, wordlessly, he drew a blade and cut the ropes from her wrists. She rubbed the red welts on her skin, then tore a strip from her own petticoat to clean the wound. "You're lucky I know what I'm doing," she muttered, forcing calm. "If the bullet's deep, he'll need steady hands." Kaya crouched beside her, his gaze fixed on every move she made. She felt his presence like heat, intimidating, powerful, yet strangely protective. The moment stretched, silent but charged with unspoken tension. She reached for a heated blade, the glow reflecting in her wide eyes. Her hands trembled slightly. "Please don't do this more," she pleaded when Kaya tried to hold the boy down roughly. "It's hurting me to see someone in pain like this." Something flickered in his eyes, confusion, perhaps shame, and for the first time, the steel in his expression softened. By the time she finished, the young warrior's breathing steadied. Evelyn sat back, exhausted, her face streaked with sweat and dust. Kaya watched her in silence before murmuring, "You saved him." She met his gaze. Now would you let me go?" The fire crackled. He looked toward the dark horizon. Not yet. The night deepened, wrapping them both in mystery. One woman desperate for freedom, one warrior haunted by duty, and a bond neither had expected beginning to form beneath the desert stars. The fire burned low through the night, snapping and sighing against the wind. Evelyn sat with her knees drawn close, her eyes heavy but her mind racing. Every shadow seemed alive. The Apache warrior Kaya sat across from her, silent and alert, his gaze lost in the flames. His brother, the wounded one, lay nearby, his breathing steadier now. Evelyn's fingers ached where the ropes had been. She rubbed the raw skin, whispering a silent prayer for morning to come. But dawn still felt an eternity away. Finally, she gathered the courage to speak. "Kaya, your brother will live. But if he gets an infection, I know," he said quietly, cutting her off. "You will stay until he walks again." She stared at him, disbelief flickering in her tired eyes. "You can't keep me here. My town will send people after me. They'll track you." Kaya looked up slowly, the faintest trace of a smirk on his face. "Your people do not know this land. The desert eats their horses. The wind covers their trail." His calmness made her chest tighten. She wanted to shout, to reason, to demand freedom, but the storm in his eyes warned her not to push too far. After a moment, Evelyn asked, "Why me?" "There must be others, doctors, healers." Kaya's gaze hardened. "Because your name was spoken by the man who led the raid on our camp." Her heart skipped. "That's not possible. I've never even met." He rose abruptly, his movements sharp as lightning. He said the name Evelyn Hart before the fire took him. He begged the spirits to forgive what he had done. Evelyn's throat went dry. "I don't understand." Kaya stepped closer, the firelight tracing the strong lines of his chest, the tribal jewelry catching faint glimmers of red and gold. "3 nights ago, white men came to our camp. They killed women, children. They burned what we had left. They said they were looking for medicine, vials, powders, things to sell. You delivered those supplies to them." Realization hit her like a gunshot. "The miners," she whispered. "I gave them medicine. They said people were sick." His jaw clenched. "They were thieves. You gave them the means to fight, to kill." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know. I swear, Kaya, I didn't know." For the first time, he looked uncertain. The fire crackled between them, and in its light, his anger warred with something softer, something he didn't want to name. He turned away. Words do not bring back the dead. She lowered her gaze. "No," she said quietly, "but maybe saving your brother can." The canyon wind moaned through the rocks, carrying the scent of rain. Evelyn pulled her shawl tighter, shivering. Kaya walked to his brother's side and placed a hand over the boy's heart, whispering something in Apache, a prayer, perhaps, or a promise. Evelyn watched him. Beneath the warrior's strength, there was grief, heavy and ancient, carved deep into his soul. After a long silence, she said softly, "You don't have to keep me tied here. I'll help, but not as your prisoner." Kaya turned to her, his dark eyes reflecting the dying fire. "If I let you go, will you run?" She hesitated. "I don't know." He gave a short nod, as if that was the answer he expected. He took a step closer, his shadow falling over her. "Then you stay until my brother walks again. Then we decide your fate." The tension between them was a living thing, hot, silent, dangerous. Evelyn drew in a shaky breath. "You think I'm like the rest of them, that I don't see you as human. But you're wrong." Kaya's eyes narrowed. "Then what do you see?" She swallowed hard. "I see a man who's lost everything and doesn't know where to put his pain." For a moment, he didn't move. The night around them felt suspended, like the desert itself was listening. Then he turned away, disappearing into the shadows near the canyon wall. Evelyn stared at the fire, tears slipping silently down her face. The desert night pressed close, full of secrets. When she finally looked up again, she saw something glinting on the ground near where he had stood, a small silver pendant shaped like a thunderbird, blackened at the edges by fire. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. The back bore an engraving, faint, worn, but still clear enough to read, "For Kaya. From your mother, may thunder protect you." Evelyn clutched it to her chest, her heart twisting with guilt and wonder. This man who'd taken her, who could have killed her without hesitation, carried the weight of loss deeper than she had ever imagined. And somewhere, buried beneath that sorrow, she felt the first spark of something she couldn't explain, pity perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. The next morning, the sun rose pale and thin, spreading its light across the canyon like a hesitant promise. The fire had burned out during the night, leaving behind nothing but a soft trail of smoke. Evelyn woke with a stiff neck and a heart that still thudded with unease. Kaya was already awake, crouched by the stream that wound through the canyon, washing his knife in silence. The sight of him in the golden morning light was both haunting and mesmerizing. His long black hair fell over his shoulders, glistening with water. The tribal beads and feathers that hung around his neck swayed gently as he moved. He looked less like a man and more like a living echo of the land itself. Fierce, proud, and impossible to understand. Evelyn stood, brushing the dust from her skirt. "Your brother needs food," she said quietly. Kaya didn't turn around. "I know. I can help you find herbs and berries that will keep his strength up. But I'll need a knife." Now he looked over his shoulder, one eyebrow raised. "You think I would give you a blade?" She met his gaze without flinching. "If I wanted to harm you, I'd have done it while you slept." A hint of amusement tugged at the corner of his mouth. Without a word, he picked up a smaller blade and tossed it at her feet. It landed in the sand with a dull thud. "Do not wander far," he said, his tone low and commanding. Evelyn picked up the knife and turned toward the canyon's edge, her heart racing. Every instinct screamed to run, to find a trail, a sign, something that would lead her out. But when she glanced back and saw Kaya tending to his brother, her feet stayed rooted to the earth. She couldn't leave. Not yet. She wandered among the rocks, collecting leaves and roots, muttering softly to herself. The air smelled of dust and sagebrush, and the cry of an eagle echoed in the distance. As she worked, her mind turned over Kaya's words from the night before. You gave them the means to fight. The miners had lied to her, used her kindness as a weapon. The guilt gnawed at her like a wound that wouldn't close. When she returned, Kaya was feeding his brother water from a gourd. The younger man, his name, she learned, was Tohani, opened his eyes and looked at her weakly. "You saved me," he rasped out. Evelyn knelt beside him. "You'll be fine if we keep the wound clean. You're strong." Tohani smiled faintly, then looked toward Kaya. "She speaks truth, brother. She means no harm." Kaya didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. He stood and turned toward the canyon mouth. "Stay here. I will hunt." As he walked away, Evelyn caught herself watching the way his muscles moved beneath his skin, the quiet grace in his every step. She shook her head, embarrassed by her own thoughts. He was her captor, nothing more. Hours passed. The sun grew hot, baking the sand. Tohani slept, his breathing steady. Evelyn sat in the shade of a boulder, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick. When she finally heard footsteps returning, she looked up and froze. Kaya was dragging something behind him, a deer freshly killed. His chest glistened with sweat, and there was blood smeared across his arm, though it didn't seem to be his own. He dropped the carcass near the fire pit and met her gaze. "You will cook," he said. She frowned. "You think I know how to?" He gave her a look that silenced her instantly. You lived among settlers. You know fire. You know hunger. Without another word, she began to prepare the meat. As she worked, Kaya sat nearby, sharpening arrows. The sound filled the air again, that soft scrape of stone on metal, rhythmic and steady, like a drumbeat of tension between them. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. When your brother heals, what happens to me? Kaya didn't look up. You will know when the time comes. That's not an answer. He paused, then said softly, You ask too many questions for a prisoner. I'm not your prisoner, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Not anymore. I'm the woman who saved your brother's life. For a moment, his eyes lifted to meet hers, dark, deep, unreadable. Then something unexpected happened. His expression softened. Maybe, he said quietly, you are the woman who saved mine. The words caught her off guard. Her heart skipped, her breath catching in her throat. Before she could speak, a sudden sound echoed through the canyon. The faint, distant report of a rifle. Kaya's head snapped toward the noise. He rose in one fluid motion, his knife flashing in his hand. Stay with Tohani, he ordered. Evelyn's pulse raced. What is it? He glanced back once, eyes burning with warning. Your people have found us. And then he was gone, vanishing into the sunlight like a ghost of the desert. The sound of the rifle echoed across the canyon like thunder rolling through the bones of the earth. Evelyn froze, her hands gripping the edge of a rock, heart pounding in her chest. The sound came from far away, but not far enough. Someone was coming. Kaya had already vanished into the scrub and shadows, his body a blur of motion and purpose. The silence that followed was worse than the gunshot itself. It was the kind of silence that made the wind seem afraid to move. Tohani stirred weakly on the ground, his breath ragged. Is it them? He whispered. I don't know, Evelyn said, forcing calm she didn't feel. Stay still. Save your strength. She crouched low, scanning the canyon walls, half expecting to see riders cresting the rim at any moment. Every crack in the rock, every distant crow call, made her flinch. Her pulse drummed in her ears. Minutes passed. Then, movement. The brush near the stream rustled, and Kaya reappeared, crouched low, his knife glinting in his hand. His chest heaved with quiet breaths, and his dark eyes burned with tension. It's your people, he said grimly. 5 men on horseback. They follow tracks but not well. They stop at the ridge. Evelyn's stomach nodded. They must be from Dry Creek, looking for me. Kaya gave a short nod. If they find this place, they will shoot first. Ask after. They don't have to, she said quickly. If I go to them, I can stop it. I can tell them you're not. His voice cut through hers, sharp and cold. They will not listen to a woman who walks beside an Apache. His words stung because she knew he was right. The people of Dry Creek didn't see Apache as men. They saw them as ghosts, savages, threats. If they found him, there would be no mercy. Kaya glanced toward his brother. I must lead them away. Evelyn's eyes widened. You'll be killed. I have been hunted before. No, Kaya, she said, stepping forward, her voice trembling. You can't go alone. Let me help. He looked at her, truly looked, as if seeing her not as a prisoner or an enemy, but as something else entirely. The wind caught his hair, sweeping it across his face. You would risk your life for mine? Evelyn hesitated, tears brimming in her eyes. I can't explain it, but yes. Something flickered behind his stern expression, a mix of surprise and something warmer, softer. Then, without another word, he handed her a small pouch. If I do not return, use this. Inside is medicine for my brother. Keep him alive. Before she could protest, he turned and slipped away, silent as a shadow. The hours that followed were unbearable. Evelyn tended to Tohani, cleaning his wound, feeding him bits of roasted meat, whispering prayers she wasn't sure anyone could hear. The sun climbed high, burning the canyon in waves of heat. Still, there was no sign of Kaya. By late afternoon, a sound reached her, distant hoofbeats. Not many, 2, maybe 3. Her heart leapt, fear and hope twisting together. She crept toward the canyon edge and peered through the brush. Down below, she saw 2 riders, men from Dry Creek, their rifles across their saddles, scanning the ground. One of them called out, "Evelyn." "Miss Hart, you alive, ma'am?" Her breath caught. She knew that voice, Sheriff Dalton. Relief flooded her chest. But so did dread. If they saw Tahani, if they found Kaya, she stepped out from the rocks. "Sheriff." "I'm here." The men reined their horses hard. "Lord Almighty," Dalton said, climbing down. "We thought you were gone for sure. You hurt?" "I'm fine," she said quickly. "But you can't stay." The second man raised his rifle, eyes narrowing. "Tracks," he said. "Indian tracks. There's one close, maybe more." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "No." "He's not—" A sharp crack split the air before she could finish. A rifle fired from the ridge above. Dust burst near the men's boots, and they spun, shouting. "Ambush!" Chaos erupted. Horses screamed. Men dove for cover. Evelyn threw herself behind a rock as another shot rang out. When she looked toward the ridge, she saw him, Kaya, standing tall against the afternoon sun, bow in hand, his long black hair whipping in the wind. "Stop," she screamed. "Please, don't." Her voice carried across the canyon, desperate, breaking. For one brief moment, Kaya's eyes met hers across the distance, and in them she saw the truth. He wasn't trying to kill. He was trying to draw them away, to save her. Then he turned and ran toward the far cliffs, his figure vanishing into the blazing horizon as bullets tore through the air behind him. Evelyn pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling over. The sheriff caught her arm. "We have to get you out of here now." But she looked toward the cliffs, voice trembling. "I can't leave him." The sheriff frowned. "Who?" She whispered, almost to herself, "The man who risked his life." "To protect mine." The desert wind swallowed her words, carrying them toward the setting sun, where Kaya had disappeared, and where fate waited to decide if love or death would claim them next. The desert night was colder than usual, and the moon hung low over the cliffs like a silent witness. The campfire crackled softly as Taza, the muscular Apache warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, sat across from Evelyn Hart, his dark eyes reflecting both flame and thought. They had escaped the bounty hunters by moving through a hidden canyon known only to his people. Now, as the wind whispered through the rocks, Evelyn could finally breathe again, but she could not rest. Taza's chest rose and fell steadily, his every movement deliberate and calm. The painted lines on his shoulders glowed faintly in the firelight, giving him an almost spiritual presence. Evelyn had spent the last 2 days at his side, running, hiding, surviving, and yet she realized she knew nothing about the man who had risked everything to save her. "Taza," she began softly, clutching her shawl around her shoulders. "Why did you help me?" "You could have left me to them." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a small piece of burning wood, staring at the embers before tossing it into the fire. "Because," he said finally, his voice low and gravelly, "once a white woman helped my mother. She gave her food, water, and a blanket when no one else would. She said kindness should not know tribe or color." Evelyn blinked, surprised. "Your mother. What happened to her?" He turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the moonlight touched the canyon's edge. "She died when soldiers came to our village. I was just a boy." but I remember that woman's eyes. The same as yours, not in color, but in pain. I could not watch another innocent fall. The silence that followed felt sacred. The fire snapped and the scent of sage drifted in the cool air. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. You speak of kindness, she whispered, but your people have suffered so much. How can you still believe in it? Taza tilted his head slightly, his hair falling over his face. Because hate burns too much. My father taught me that a warrior must fight to protect, not to destroy. Evelyn stared at him, at the strength in his body, the scars across his chest. The way his spirit seemed to carry a weight far greater than any man she had known. You don't seem like other warriors I've met, she said. He gave a faint, almost sad smile. That is because I have seen too much blood. My tribe, the Chiricahua, taught me that peace is harder than war. But I still fight when I must. As the fire dimmed, he stood and walked toward his horse, checking the saddle and water skins. Evelyn followed him, her footsteps soft on the sand. Where will we go now? She asked. Taza turned, his face half shadowed by moonlight. To the sacred valley. My people will not harm you there. You will be safe. Evelyn hesitated. And you? I will face the bounty hunters, he said simply. They seek my head as much as yours. If they find us together, they will kill you too. Her heart raced. No, she said, her voice trembling. You can't face them alone. You saved my life. I can't let you die because of me. Taza stepped closer, his presence powerful yet gentle. You owe me nothing, Evelyn Hart. I saved you because it was right. She looked up at him, the wind brushing her hair against his chest. Then let me stay by your side, not because I owe you, but because I choose to. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The canyon seemed to breathe with them, ancient, vast, eternal. Finally, Taza reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. You are brave, he murmured, but bravery must live another day. He handed her his necklace, a small turquoise stone wrapped in leather cord. Keep this. If I do not return by sunrise, ride east. Follow the stars until the ground turns green again. Promise me. Evelyn held the necklace tightly, her heart pounding. I promise, she whispered. Taza gave one final nod before turning toward the shadows, disappearing into the night. A warrior bound by duty, a man guided by heart. And as the firelight faded, Evelyn stared at the horizon, whispering into the desert wind, Come back to me, Taza. The canyon held her words, echoing them softly, as if even the land itself prayed for his return. The moon was full over the canyon that night, pale light spilling like milk over the stone ridges. The wind whispered through the narrow pass, carrying the scent of sage and smoke. Evelyn sat near the small fire, her hands wrapped around her knees. Kaya stood a few feet away, motionless, looking out at the valley below. His silhouette, carved in silver light, looked both human and spirit. Strong shoulders, bronze skin gleaming faintly, long black hair moving with the desert wind. For the first time in days, no one spoke. The silence wasn't cruel anymore. It was full of something unspoken, a fragile understanding born from pain and survival. Kaya finally turned to her, his dark eyes reflecting the fire. You should sleep, he said softly. I can't, Evelyn murmured. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The men who burned your village. Kaya's jaw tensed. They were soldiers, he said. They did what men do when they believe they own the earth. She hesitated, voice trembling. And now you do the same to me? His gaze flickered, a wounded pride. No, I do not own you, white woman. I took you because I needed you to see, to understand. He stepped closer, the firelight painting his chest in gold and red. They took everything from us. My brother's blood on the sand. My mother's beads scattered like tears. You ask why I hate your kind? Because you never look back. Evelyn felt tears burn her eyes. I didn't do those things, Kaya. He looked at her for a long moment, his breath visible in the cool night air. Then, to her surprise, he crouched beside the fire. No, he said, but you carry their name, their silence. That is enough to make you part of the wound. She swallowed, heart aching. And if I want to heal it? Kaya's expression softened for the first time. Then stay, he said quietly. Stay tonight not as prisoner, but as soul. The fire popped between them. Evelyn's hands trembled. She didn't know if he meant what she thought he did, yet something in his tone, in his eyes, told her this was not about possession or vengeance. It was about release, about forgiveness that neither of them knew how to give. The night deepened. Coyotes cried in the distance. She shifted closer to the flames, and her hand brushed his, accidentally or maybe not. Kaya didn't move away. His fingers, rough and warm, wrapped gently around hers. Please don't do this more, she whispered, tears in her voice. It's hurting me. He turned toward her then, his face caught between shadow and fire. No, he said softly. This is not pain. This is what truth feels like. And in that fragile moment, something inside her cracked open. Grief, guilt, understanding. She could see it in him too, in the tremor that passed through his jaw, in the way his breath slowed as if fighting back everything he'd ever been told not to feel. He rose slowly and extended a hand. Come, he said. There is something I must show you. She hesitated but took his hand. He led her up the slope to a ridge overlooking the canyon. There, the desert spread beneath them, endless, ancient, shimmering under moonlight. He pointed to a series of dark shapes near the horizon. Burial mounds, he said quietly. My people. My family. The soldiers buried them shallow, but we found them. Evelyn covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Oh, God. Kaya knelt, his hand brushing the dust as if greeting ghosts. I bring fire here every year, he whispered, to tell them I remember. She sank beside him, unable to speak. The air was heavy with sorrow and spirit. Then Kaya reached into a leather pouch around his neck and pulled out a small turquoise bead, the last of his mother's necklace. He placed it gently into her palm. You keep this, he said. If you truly wish to heal, carry this. It is the weight of what you now know. Evelyn looked down at the bead, glowing faintly in the moonlight. I'll never forget, she said. Kaya's gaze lingered on her face, his expression unreadable. Then he whispered something in Apache, a word that sounded like a prayer and a goodbye all at once. The wind stirred again, soft and cold. The fire below flickered weakly, then went out, leaving the two of them in a silence older than grief itself. The fire had long gone cold by the time the first light reached the canyon. The ashes glowed faintly, gray and lifeless, like the ghosts that had whispered through the night. Evelyn hadn't slept. She sat near the dying embers, the turquoise bead clenched tightly in her hand. It was warm, as if it still carried the heartbeat of another world. Kaya stood a few feet away, silent as the morning wind. His long black hair, tangled from the night, framed his strong bronze face. The tribal jewelry across his chest caught the faint sunlight, glittering like the last sparks of something sacred. He looked down toward the horizon, where smoke still rose from the town that had once been her home. They will come, Evelyn said quietly. They'll come looking for me. Kaya nodded without turning. I know. His voice carried no fear, only certainty, the kind of calm that comes from a man who has lived too close to death for too long. Evelyn rose slowly, brushing the dust from her skirt. If they find you, they won't, he interrupted. You will tell them I died. Her throat tightened. Don't ask me to lie. He looked at her then, and for the first time there was something almost human in his gaze. Not the fire of revenge, not the storm of grief, but peace. A quiet surrender. I am already a ghost to them, Kaya said softly. To the white men, I am an enemy. To my own, I am the last echo. It is time I fade. Evelyn stepped closer, shaking her head. No, you're not a ghost. You saved me. You made me see what my people did. You made me feel it. His jaw clenched as if holding back emotion. That is enough, he said. The sun rose higher, painting the rocks in shades of copper and gold. Birds flew across the canyon mouth, their cries breaking the silence. Evelyn's heart ached as she looked at him. This warrior who had begun as her captor and become her salvation. She whispered, "Come with me. We can go east. There are places no one will find us." Kaya smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurts more than tears. I cannot leave this land, he said. My blood is here. My ancestors sleep beneath this dust. A man cannot run from his own bones. He walked to his horse, the black stallion that had waited patiently through the night, and placed his bow across the saddle. The light caught his bare shoulders, tracing every scar, every memory carved into his skin. Evelyn's voice broke. Then let me stay. He paused, turning slowly. You do not belong to this world, Evelyn Hart, but... He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The world you return to will never be the same. Because you carry this. He touched her hand where the turquoise bead still rested. She closed her fingers around it, tears slipping free. And what do you carry? He looked toward the ridge where the burial mounds lay. Their forgiveness, he said. And maybe yours. They stood there in silence, the desert wind moving between them. Then, far off, the faint echo of hoofbeats reached their ears, men coming from the valley, armed, searching. Evelyn's heart pounded. Kaya, but he was already moving. He swung onto his horse in one smooth motion, every line of his body strong and fluid. The wind caught his hair, the morning sun catching the silver in his jewelry. He looked down at her once more, eyes soft but resolute. Tell them you never found me, he said. Before she could answer, he spurred the horse and galloped toward the canyon's far edge. The sound of hooves echoed like thunder through the valley, a rhythm ancient and eternal. Evelyn ran forward, calling his name, Kaya. He turned once at the ridge, raising his hand in farewell, a silhouette of strength against the burning sunrise, then disappeared into the endless desert beyond. The riders appeared moments later, shouting, searching, rifles glinting. They surrounded Evelyn, demanding answers. She said nothing. Her gaze remained fixed on the horizon where the warrior had vanished. Did you see him? One asked. She closed her fingers around the turquoise bead and whispered, No, he's gone. They didn't hear the tremor in her voice, the weight of everything that word carried. When they finally left, Evelyn remained alone in the canyon. The wind picked up again, swirling dust and ashes around her feet. She looked toward the burial ridge and knelt, pressing the turquoise bead into the earth. For peace, she whispered Dot as the sun climbed higher. Light poured over the land, over the graves, over the campfire ashes. Over every scar the desert remembered Dot, and somewhere beyond the horizon, Kaya rode beneath that same light. A spirit of the old world fading into legend, free at last, carried by the wind. His name echoing across the canyon walls like a final prayer.